So we're going to start. Unfortunately, there's a major kind of area where I go into some videos. Those videos are not having a bar of anything. They won't talk to this lectern. You can come and have a look at them afterwards, like if you want, around my busted laptop, which should have been sent off for repairs, but I was told it was going to be away for a few weeks. And I went, no, I can't really do that. So, oh gosh. So let's start, shall we? Okay, so thank you. Hello everyone, and welcome to, obviously, Accessibility as a Primary Design Consideration, the early journey of Blind Sparrow Interactive. Possibly the longest title of any talk, but it captured two things that I wanted to talk about today, and that is accessibility as a primary design consideration, and also the journey for us. This studio actually started a year ago today, so it's quite provident that it's today that I'm talking. I want to start with the accessibility of this talk. So resources are actually going to be posted at this web link, which is www.blindSparrowinteractive.com/accessibility-resources/. So basically just go to the website and look for the resources tab is the easy way to that. There will be some visual material, so I'm going to try and describe that at times. And of course, as you can see, we're trialing live captioning, which is a great feature if it gets it right. And the reason why I've decided to keep it up there, because it can actually turn what I say to the opposite, is actually so you understand like the role of captions and also some of its challenges. And yeah, sometimes it will say words that I don't say, which is really interesting. Of course, if you want, follow us on Blind Sparrow Int, and I will post resources. I'll probably get to posting them all up by the end of the week today, end of GCAP week. Okay, so I want to do an early thanks. Our team is ace. I owe them everything. And anything that you see in this talk, anything that you hear from me has come because of them. I hopefully have just been a little bit of like a vessel that's sucked up all this knowledge, but really my team were the ones that taught me a lot of this, and I want to extend that to all the accessibility advocates as well. There are so many, and they are awesome, and they're doing an amazing job. So I want them to hear that anyone who has worked for us, this is your journey too. So it's not about me. Okay, remember you've got this. This is not actually for me. This is actually for you. The reason I put this up here is because there might be times where this talk, you know, that little part of your brain starts going, oh, hang on, this is going to be a little bit hard, or I'm not ready for this, or I couldn't possibly. Actually, you can. You've got this. Like, my challenge to you would be to listen to what is going on in your head. One of the things I've learned on this journey is to, whenever I say, oh, you know, that's going to be too hard, or, oh, no, I couldn't possibly, is to try and understand where that thought is coming from. And then put that to you as well. But also listen to it when it's telling you something awesome, like, wow, I want to do this, or, hey, that's a good start. Listen to it and act on it, on the good things. Act on the good things, challenge the negative things. Probably the way I would go with that. So what this talk is and what it isn't. Some things have to be said. Accessibility has been a little bit of a controversial topic, as we know from our Twitterverse, and has been, you know, through some ups and downs. It has extended, this conversation has extended years and years before us, it's been going for a long, long time. But games is just starting to listen, starting to really take notes. So here's an overview of the talk. Accessibility is good, period. I'm not here to convince you about that fact. If you do need to have that conversation, there are other people that probably have the energy to talk to you about that. As far as I'm concerned, it's kind of like the climate change of the games industry. You can say all you like that climate change isn't happening. Sorry. It kind of is, and that's where I'm at with this. We've had this conversation. Accessibility is good as far as I'm concerned. This is about our journey. There is no right, there is no wrong. There's what we've learned, there's what's worked for us. I am not an expert in any of this. I would definitely say go and follow the great accessibility advocates, and as part of the resources, I'll actually list them on that website link. And we are going to look at 2 case studies, ready to roll and closed captions. We might not get to look at the closed captions one the way that I would like us to, purely because of the technical issues. And a little bit about starting your own journey. So if you are having thoughts about, okay, hey, you know, I'm curious as to how I might be able to bring this into my own studio or into my own work or into my own world. So that's the journey. We are already, like, because of the technical difficulties, 10 minutes behind, so I'm going to try and motor along. What is accessibility? I just want to sort of touch on this a little bit. I'm not going to go into too much detail. It is everything that you think it is, like so in-game features-wise, and that ranges from cognitive accessibility through to blind, deaf, hard of hearing, the works in terms of physical as well, right across the board. It is all that, but it's all that and more. So it extends, the way that I talk about accessibility is that it extends to everything you do. So yes, put accessibility features into your game, but if your trailer, for example, or your major marketing tools don't have accessibility, you've already sort of fallen down a little bit in that. You're already putting, again, some walls back up in the way of people accessing your content and sharing about it, getting excited about it and being involved. So it extends to things like trailers and social media, it extends to information, the way that you provide information in your game and your guides, a whole lot of other things. Social media is a really good one because Twitter, for example, has descriptive images. And if you're not using that feature, I would encourage you to do so because it's so simple. It's just every time you post a picture, put a very brief description and you suddenly make it accessible for anyone who's blind. Okay, studio accessibility. All right, so this is a little bit different. It goes through to, for me at least, and for our studio, it goes through to hiring disabled devs and creatives. There are so many talented disabled people, and they have amazing stories to tell. And it comes right down to how you run a studio and your staff culture, how you set up the work, how you welcome people into that space and make it work for them. So that's accessibility as a general topic. Okay, this one's going to be a little bit, feels a little bit pointed, but this is actually the mirror I hold up and make myself look into. So it's going to be a bit harsh, but like I say, it's literally, I'm this harsh on myself. So what it isn't, it's not you saving the world. Okay, particularly this is aimed a lot at able people. You're actually the problem, not the hero. Like, it's a really dangerous place to get into that thought process of, oh, you know, I'm going to go out and save disabled people from themselves. Horrible, horrible thought. Please kill that straight away. You're actually the problem. Thing is, accessibility should have been something that we were doing in games for years and years. Like, one of the topics I bring up is closed captions. The TV industry, still not amazing at it, but has been doing it for 30, 40 years. We're like, oh, you know, people are winning awards just a couple of years ago for including good subtitles. Not even great, not even, you know, television standard subtitles, but good ones. So we're actually sort of the ones that have set up the walls, and it's us to tear it down. It's not a big favour to be reciprocated. One of the things that I find and is really awful is when somebody puts accessibility features in their game, and this is, okay, I've put in blind accessibility, or I've put in, you know, subtitles. Why aren't deaf people buying my game? They don't have to. okay? It's not something that that they're obliged to do, okay? So just make sure you keep that. It's not about being woke. Woke is a word that I really personally dislike a lot of, because if you ever say that you're woke, as far as I'm concerned, it means you're not. Because woke is about bursting a bubble that you've been in, only to discover that you're actually now can maybe start to see the next bubble that you're inside of. So I will never claim to be woke. I am always learning, always learning, always learning. And if I've managed to have some little brainwave on something and finally be able to do something, chances are I suddenly see another whole layer that I realize that, or even just the journey is sometimes you can't see things, or you're in different spaces. So it's not something you do to be lauded. Don't put accessibility features in just to win awards or just to be lauded. Don't, please. And it's not diminishing of anything. And this is a bit of a dig at the idea that it will destroy your creative vision. It won't. In fact, I'll get on to what it is. It's doing what should be standard. It's about being a decent human being. It's really about, respect across all people. And that's the big challenge, not the big challenge, but that's why diversity is important. It's literally about being a decent human being to all people and welcoming them in. Creating a more equal society, particularly for able people. Let's face it, we actually have a lot of the power, a lot of the privilege. It's literally about saying, actually, you know what, it's not fair that I should have so much and you have not as much. It's about sharing that and giving up some of it. It's about confronting your prejudices. This is a really tough one. It's like, we never think, or we never like to think that we've got prejudices, but we do. And sometimes it'll come at a pointy end, and it's about realizing, oh, actually, no, I do have that. I need to challenge that. I need to work on that. And it's about bettering yourself and your game. Your game will be better for adding accessibility, and a lot of that is because it will actually challenge your initial game designs and make them simpler or better or faster or easier to navigate. So it'll actually make your game better. Okay, a year ago today, so as I said, studio started a year ago and a bit before. I say a bit before because I'm going to start with me. So who am I? No one amazing. That's not me having bad self-worth. That's just literally, I want you to realize that there's nothing special about you. You don't have to have been in any situation to care about accessibility. You don't have to have special skills. You don't have to be anything amazing. You can just be you. However, a little bit about my background. I've been 12 to 15 years in games. Started off in media primarily. I work for THQ. I am responsible partially for UDraw. Do not hold that against me. They changed it significantly from our initial concept. Another whole talk. I've worked for Disney Australia and Surprise Attack, which later became Fellow Traveller, as an indie publisher. I came into the games industry wanting to do something meaningful after quite a number of years of really not feeling like I had. I did little things, but nothing really meaningful. I knew it was time. It was like, you know what, I need to take a risk here. I need to go out and do something. I had never made a game, no real dev skills. I potted around with some coding, that's it. So at the ripe old age of almost 49 years of age, yes, I'm 50 this year in a couple of months, I became a dev. Haha, and started a studio. Haha. Yeah. And last year, interestingly, I sat where you sit. So last year was the first time I'd ever been to a GCAP, ever thought of myself as a dev in that regard, and it blew my mind being at GCAP. GCAP's amazing, always. Personally, I also have 12-year-old triplets. I have a daughter and 2 boys. My daughter is named after a video game character. Don't hold that against me. And my 2 boys are autistic. And they have significant developmental delays. So not Hollywood autistic, they come with some definite challenges. So let's get on to the studio. So the initial studio concept, the studio began on October 8, 2010, and our primary goals were actually started with blind accessibility. So we wanted to make blind accessible games. We wanted to contract disabled developers and get blind people into the process and into the idea that they could be devs. And we wanted to put accessibility at the forefront of everything we did. That was pretty much the main concept of the studio. And we just wanted to do good and show another way, to look at accessibility differently to how I was seeing it from other studios. What makes us different? So accessibility is a primary design consideration. We start with accessibility. We don't start with like every part of an idea starts with accessibility. We actively make sure that our team is filled with disabled developers, and that's because we embrace the idea of diversity in its fullest sense. So a lot of people sort of include diversity and then forget disabled people. And actually, it's all one package. Different take on studio culture. We do not do crunch. It's just a hard and fast rule. There's no such thing. And I will always structure work around people rather than people around work. Know the pain of freelancers. I worked with enough writers who were in media, freelancing and dying by degrees. So pay fair, pay fast. I have a rule that basically 48 hours of you sending an invoice in, I will have it paid. So it also keeps the studio really acute as to where we are with money, which is great. Faith is at the core of the studio being conceived, my faith in particular, and that includes partly just wanting to share the love, hope and promises of God. Faith is, I think it was Osama who did the talk yesterday on investing yourself into your projects, and that's me. Like, that's part of me, so that's part of the studio. And the journey is a success. This is probably the biggest thing that makes us different. So success for us is not about the destinations. It's actually about the journey. So if the studio wrapped up tomorrow, everyone will be paid, which is great. I don't have to worry about that. But also, I would deem this a success, because every single day that we continue to grow and learn and be the studio that we would like to be, that's a success. Putting out games, that's a bonus, like, as far as I'm concerned. So this is really, it's very freeing. Let me tell you, when you stop looking at development as a means to an end, like, I've invested all this money, I have to get this game out, or because I'm going to hate the process if it's not done and if it's not successful. Whereas we're taking a completely other approach. Okay, enough of that. First 4 months, can we even do this? I'd never devved, never run a studio. Really, the first and foremost idea in my head was, is this even possible? So I gave myself a bit of a, 4 months. Okay, can I make something in 4 months? Can I pull together a team? Can I find an idea? And just do a test. Like, rather than invest my, if I couldn't do it, if I was horrible at it, and thought that I couldn't learn, because I still gave myself the ability to fail, but keep going. But if I was absolutely terrible, then, maybe the studio would have closed down then, and not a lot would be lost. So started doing by listening, finding an idea. So I jumped into audio game forums and just listened, watched what people were saying, listening to what they did, how they interacted, what they enjoyed. And so we came up with the idea of Ready to Roll, which is a utility, not a game. The reason I chose a utility is because it's a little bit easier in terms of it's got a very simple function where that does not have the game loops. We tried to learn all the things And that's everything from running a studio to setting up a company to finding a team and knowing how to set that up to knowing how to make the processes accessible. And then we released the app and evaluated. And the evaluation came, yeah, we did a pretty all right job, like reasonably happy. So we kept going. And then this happened. So about when I first put the app onto the App Store, I sent Apple an email just saying, hey, just letting you know, just launched this. This is who we are. This is a bit about us. Didn't hear anything back. And then suddenly, out of the blue, an email comes in and it says, hey, we really like your story. We'd like to do something on that. So this was in the first, when you open up the App Store, you've got the Today section. This was the first feature story of Today, and it was about our studio, which was at that point about 6 months old by the time this came out. It was a too early spotlight. It was massive. We freaked out. Well, I freaked out. Nobody else needed to freak out as much, although people did a little bit. It was basically featuring for Global Accessibility Awareness Day 2019. And so we became the primary story on the App Store for the app that we developed. The good was one of my absolute primary goals is to ensure that the devs that are part of my studio get the chance to be the spotlight. In fact, if anything, I'm kind of hoping this is maybe the first and last talk that I give other than the one at PAX, because what I would love is for the rest of my team to be the people up on the stage. And so when Apple contacted me and they said, oh yeah, we want to run a story, I said, great, but you have to do something for me. And that is, it can't be about me. I don't want it to be about me. This studio is not about me. This is about the team. And so I said, I really want you to profile and spend the time interviewing two of our devs, who one is blind deaf and one is blind. And so they did, despite the fact that one lives in Finland, one lives in the US, and I live in Melbourne, because they said, hey, can we get a team photo? It's like, we work remotely. We are not even in the same place. So Apple were incredible about that because they actually sent a team to Finland. They sent a team to the US, and they sent organised photo shoots for myself as well. So 3 different places, and they spent hours interviewing the 2 devs that featured there, Brandon and Ripley. So it was fantastic. Short-term sales spike from the featuring. We had some experience working with a behemoth first party who had very specific ways of doing things, which was great, good experience. The bad, it was a huge investment of time and energy for us. It threw our production out. Wasn't expecting it, the amount of time that we invested into it was mammoth. And unfortunately, that early spotlight suddenly made me feel very conscious about the studio and how it was set up. Was I doing it right? How were we going into the second project? At that stage, we were starting to work on that. Did I have the right team, etc. So it was a really unfortunate thing. So discovering our identity 2.0. So pulling out of the post-Apple tailspin, because I, more than anyone, because of the lack of experience that I had in running a studio, fortunately, I went and got sound advice. Whenever your own head is telling you things that are, and you just don't know which way to turn, go find someone who knows better. Always go find someone who knows better, in fact. So John Cartwright, an old friend in the industry, I sort of tweeted that I was having a bit of a hard time, and he said, just give me a call. And he was amazing. I had to go back to remembering that success is a journey, that making mistakes was going to be part of that journey, that not having everything perfect or right, or not worrying about what Apple might think we are, worrying about just being us was great. It also taught me to think wider than blind accessibility. I realized that, wait, why aren't we doing a bigger accessibility job on what we work on? And so we started working on finding our next project and what we want to say. And it helped us get a better idea of, hey, if somebody comes looking for us, you know, are we set up even, because even the basics, I'd left a lot of what I thought were not important parts about setting the studio up in terms of its identity and, you know, having really clear descriptions of what the studio was about. And I realized that that was... So the new project too. So this is, I'm not going to reveal the name of it at this point, but this is literally where we're at right now. We are working on a cyberpunk-themed digital card game about inequality, power, and the struggle to rise up in a world that wants to keep you down. Still working on the pitch. Please don't hate the pitch right now. If it's not abundantly clear, this is a game about what it's like to be marginalised. It's a game about what it's like to be a disabled person living in an enabled world that constantly has to endure really daft things by people like myself. And it's being written by Ripley, who appeared before. So it is their take on it. It's their voice. I said, I want to make a game. You told me what the game should be about. And they said, I want to write something about inequality. So that's where we came out of it. We actually tried a different concept to start with. Didn't work. Came to this. Brilliant. Starting to work. So case study 1, ready to roll. So this gets into the nitty-gritty of applying accessibility to a project right from the beginning. And I'm just looking, I have so much to catch up on. Primary design consideration. Usually this is how a game works. Theme, mechanics, idea, all give you the theme, mechanics, purpose, audio, etc. all feed into the idea. This is how we look at things. Accessibility applies to mechanics. So you don't just take mechanics and then add accessibility features after. It's like, how does accessibility change the mechanics? How does accessibility change the information that I'm putting into the game? How does it change the visuals? So representation, all sorts of size of typefaces, everything comes into that. So that's sort of where we start. So what we made the, it was ready to roll as an accessible RPG dice manager. It was basically born out of the idea that tabletop RPGs are a theatre of the mind, but one of the things that stopped a lot of, and they've got a great social aspect for blind people, being able to play with sighted people. But one of the problems of it was, for blind people, rolling dice is a huge problem because it slows down the process. And if anyone who's played D&D knows, people hate things that slow down the process because you just get bogged down in none of the fun part and all of the mechanical part. It met our studio expertise. None from me. I mean, I have some talented other devs, which is fantastic. And no balancing game loop, kind of. I say that because QA taught us otherwise. In terms of how the app was actually used is a game loop in itself, even if you don't think of it in terms of game mechanics. How fast could someone use it, etc. And that comes, whoops. These are some screenshots from the App Store. I will describe them really quickly. They basically show a dice in the middle. You can see at the top of the screen would be some of the information. All of this would be read out. So for a blind person, everything you're seeing visually, apart from because of these the marketing assets, so ignore the little banner across the bottom, everything would be able to be read out. So a blind person could know exactly what page it's on. You could hold down a button and it would read any information that they need or give them any information on. For example, so swiping up, for example, on, say, the second screenshot, would roll the dice. Swiping down would clear the dice. It would tell them what actions could be taken on that page. So you know nothing Blind Sparrow. There's kind of like a bit of a reference to Game of Thrones, obviously. So one of the best things we did, and I always say it's It's the first and best thing we did was hiring a consultant, because I knew that I knew nothing, which was something. And I watched and I listened and I realized how little I actually knew. So even before the studio actually existed, I'd already approached Brandon, who's an accessibility consultant. I didn't know he was. I actually contacted because I saw some of his writing and really enjoyed reading it. And he was amazing, amazing. And I told him about my idea for this app, and he just laid it all out and said, oh, make sure you consider this and this and this. And the few $100s that I spent on a couple of hours of consulting on that idea was worth everything. So invest a little bit at the start, it will save you heaps. And it gave me the confidence and the studio the confidence to move forward. 5 seconds or less go. So in dice rolling, basically a sighted person can pick up dice, roll them, and know the result within about 5 seconds, more or less. And that includes multiple dice. So our goal was to do the same thing. We wanted a blind player with a little bit of practice to be able to do the same action and have the result already read out to them. And I'm just throwing a little thought here. Accessibility is about equality. It was about putting people on an equal footing in terms of how they could play a game. So how do we go about creating that kind of speed? We laid it all out flat. We gave a logical structure to the layout, consistent, simple gestures, one-hand controls max, because everybody should be able to play D&D and eat snacks with our figure on that. And a player should know where they're going before they start swiping. So a simple memory map so that anyone could pick it up and after a couple of turns realize, oh, okay, the D20 is there, and know how to get to it without having to go like open up different layers of things. So it was all flat. And if you want to know what that looked like, kind of like that. This is my horrible game deving being revealed. So just as an image description, there's a notebook and it's got scrolls of how the pages might be laid out and just thoughts all over the place. It looks like, I don't know, it's horrible. But it's awesome because this is where my brain does so much. We also took to the principle, if it's not spoken, it didn't happen. For a blind person, doesn't matter whether you've, got amazing information if they can't hear it, particularly if they are completely blind. And remember that blindness does have a spectrum. A lot of blind people do have some sight, but wanted it so that even a completely blind person would be able to understand exactly where they were at. So everything voiced by a human, thanks Grace, who is our primary voice actor. Slower, faster, simpler. So we gave 3 options: verbose, individual, and brief ways of reading things out. Verbose is like, it would tell you that you've rolled the dice, that what you've rolled, and the result in full English sentences. And we had like individual, so it would actually read out each single dice if you needed to know the number of each dice. And brief was just, you've rolled 3d6 plus 2d4 for a result of 4, 11. I can't work out if that calculates properly, but anyway, there we go. And we had authentic folly. So one of the big things was when somebody who's not attuned to listening as well hears dice rolled across the table, might not be able to pick up on what individual dice are being rolled. But for someone for whom sound is everything, those differences matter. Like the sound of D4 of rolling across the table versus a D20 is massively different. So I wanted authentic folly. Every single dice sound is exactly that dice being rolled. And then we recorded multiple versions of them so that you don't just get the one dice sound for D4. There's like 9 versions of each different dice being rolled. And sound effects that imply meaning. So swiping up should sound like swiping up, moving pages. Saving something should sound, dramatic, like you've etched something into, metal or steel, which is what a big clunking kind of hammer sort of sound. So we went with sound effects that really implied the meaning of what they're, not just sounded good. Make it inclusive, representative. So one of the things we wanted to do was that D&D was this amazing concept of bringing blind and sighted players together in a social context. So we wanted to embody that. There was an inclusive, wonderful aspect about that. So we did the same thing. We basically wanted an app that a sighted person could pick up and also understand. So it could be shared, or everybody could use the same app and everyone would feel the same. We included key art of a blind adventurer, so it was a representative as well. We wanted something, depicting blindness is one of those interesting things in terms of visually. We're still getting better at it, but we started in a place that was pretty good. And we included audio descriptions of that art. So even a blind person could know what the key art was in the app. So it doesn't mean visually unappealing. Some people do make audio games and they just have a black screen. They go, you know what, I'm going to save on the art assets. Out of time. Wow. Okay. So I'm going to wrap this up in like really fast. Okay. So this talk is, okay, unfortunate. So here's some examples of, we actually did color blindness testing on the art as well. QA is your friend. Oh my gosh, what we learned in QA, it was just, began the whole process, design process again, so please QA. You never fail, you just learn and grow. So we got some things right. What we learned, this is going to be awful. I'm going to just avoid the whole of case study 2, closed captions, which is this. Wow, okay, this is a massive part. So all those videos that wouldn't work, yeah, you're not going to see this. I'm going to jump down to here, starting your own journey. Some things we learned, some resources. So micro checklist, assume you know nothing. Start listening to disabled players and advocates. Start with your heart. Like, where do you want to start? That's a really good place. Able Gamers APX, which is really important in terms of pack of cards, and in fact I've got them here if you want to look at them afterwards. They'll give you prompters about that. Hire accessibility consultants, hire accessibility devs. Employ disabled devs and creatives. Nothing about them or for them without them. It was interesting, I was reading that actually, I know we use it in a lot of contexts these days, but it came back to a lot of accessibility activism. That phrase came out of, prejudice keeps disabled devs out of work, not their disabilities, many benefits. Wow, I am really... Okay, I want to drop this on you. Think about this, the current work paradigm is based on inherently abled standards. Go away and think about that a lot, because I could give a talk on this. And if you want to really bake your noodle and you don't mind opening the Bible, go to Matthew 21:16. I was going to read it if I had time. Jesus was often countercultural and turned things on their head. And right now, this is one of the things that I am wrestling with as a studio, is to look at how work exists for everyone, how it can be better done. Our idea about output and our idea of effort is measured in terms of what is produced, not necessarily what a person gives to their work, based on what they are able to give. So, fascinating concept. Come and find me sometime in the next 2 days and we can have a chat about it for ages. Accessible tools for your team. Trello, but we use it differently. It's mostly blind accessible, it's colorblind accessible, it works with email. Google Docs and Sheets are great, but please turn on the accessibility option in that. Plain text email works for a lot of my team. Twitter DMs for quick messaging. PayPal, we've written a screen reader guide for invoicing that can be found on the website in the resources. But find what works best for your devs. If you hire someone who is disabled, talk to them about how they best want to work, and then open yourself to embracing that. I probably have about 16 different ways of working with my team, based on what they need, based on what they can produce in the time frame, based on what they do so well. Ask someone. Get help in Australia and New Zealand if you want to. We're always happy to help. Come find me. Email Blind Sparrow Int, or the email is hello@blindsparrowinteractive.com. Accessibility Unlocked, an amazing, amazing, amazing group. Huge plug for them. You'll find them on Twitter at AccessUnlockINZ. And also, as I say, see the resources link. And that was the brutally butchered, cut down version of my talk. So thank you. There is no Q&A.